the Italian Football Podcast.
I'll tell you what else isn't good is the number of injuries in football. We already did a couple of weeks ago, I did an interview about the ACL epidemic in football. But if we look at injuries as a whole, it's a huge problem. There's a massive injury crisis at so many Italian clubs right now. Juventus are completely decimated. I mean, they could barely put out a bench right now. I mean, it's horrific, Juventus' injury crisis. Inter now as well, decimated in midfield. They lost two players in the first 25 minutes of this game against Roma with Calhanoglu and Acerbi, and they've already got a lot of injuries in midfield already. Atalanta, I mean, their Scudetto chances were destroyed before the season even began because of injury. You know, two ACLs to Scamacca and Scalvini, and their defence is completely decimated right now. They've got so many players out in defence. Bologna, completely decimated. They're without half their first team at the moment. Genoa, if they're not enough in crisis already, they're without 7 first-team players. It's horrific, their injury crisis. I could go on and on. That's just in Serie A. You know, then, I mean, if you want to go around Europe and see all the injury problems around Europe in other leagues, you know, we've got Euro 2024 that we saw. I mean, Italy were decimated for that tournament. So many key players injured. The Netherlands, the same. I mean, the football was really bad. The teams looked exhausted. All the big teams I thought were really poor, except for Spain and maybe Germany weren't too bad. So, you know, there's that. And then there's what is becoming a really, really big discussion point now around Europe is the increase in games around Europe. I mean, this season, the Champions League increased by 4 games a season, 2 more group games, an extra knockout round. There's this ridiculous Club World Cup at the end of the season. The World Cup's been expanded from 32 to 48 teams. The Nations League has replaced friendlies. It's the same number of games, but they're more competitive games. And we haven't had, as I've said so many times on this, but we haven't had a proper season break since before the COVID pandemic. Since the summer of 2019, that's the last time that the players actually had a proper break, either in the summer or a season break before the new season started. So this has all led to, you know, a lot of complaints. Rodri said earlier this season, talking about the threat of strike, and then I saw Marotta was very strong with his words before the game against. This was before the game against Roma, by the way, before these 2 injuries, and he said, and I'll read out his quotes. He said, "There have been circa 100 injuries for players who also have international duty, and we need to safeguard their health. It is not an easy situation because we need to sit around the table and recognise that the fixture list has to be cut back. What we need and currently do not have is a single place where all those involved can meet and discuss it together. There are activities for clubs, for UEFA, for FIFA, and that confrontation has only just begun. The number of games must be reduced because the pace of the sport is now so high that it leads to more errors and more injuries, far superior to the average that we've seen in previous years." So I'm going to make this very simple. I'm going to ask this very simple to Nima. Should footballers go on strike?
I think it's if it continues like this, it'll be inevitable. I mean, I've said it many, many times when we've discussed this topic that something horrible will happen before something is done, and I'm scared that we will end up there soon.
Well, hasn't something already horrible happened?
No, I mean horrible as in death. Someone will die, like permanently injure themselves in a very horrible way, because before they do something about it. Unfortunately, that's just how it works. That they don't do anything to stop something horrible happening, but once it happens, then everyone takes then they have to stop and calm down. But I think we're headed towards a tragedy, and a tragedy that will lead to something being done, because the only other option is extending the squad sizes to 25, 27, 28, up to 30 in order to be able to handle this, because it's too many games.
Marotta was asked that as well, by the way. He was asked that, and he basically kind of said what I think, which is it's not really workable, because it's just not workable from logistically, and also from in terms of how do you? It's impossible to train. You can't train 30 players. It's impossible. It's just not workable on a training ground, and some clubs can't afford it either. And also what will happen is because the stakes are so high, and because if you're challenging for titles or you're playing big knockout games, you end up playing your best players. You don't rotate and rest players because you want to win. And so I don't think that would work either.
No, I don't think so either. But that's the only other option. But yeah, I do think that they should do something. I think the players' unions should put their feet down. And I think they'll probably have support from the clubs here as well, to a certain extent, because clubs don't enjoy paying players high wages, when they can't play them because they're injured. And they need to work this out. The number of games need to be reduced. My position, I think we should go back to an 18-team Serie A. I like the new format of the Champions League, but I think there's too many teams in it. I'd like to keep the format, but keep it like it was before with 6 games. And yeah, that's pretty much where I am with that.
I think that this Club World Cup at the end of the season, the players now, they need to really put their foot down and just say, we're not playing it. Enough is enough. It's a joke. We haven't even played this Club World Cup, and look at the increase in injuries and the increase in ACL injuries, and we know that fatigue and exhaustion is the biggest factor with ACL injuries, because it weakens the muscles and it puts too much pressure on like the ACL, and that's what happens. We haven't even played the Club World Cup, and we're already the ACL epidemic and this injury epidemic is already. It's there to be seen. We've seen the numbers. The numbers speak for themselves. We haven't even played the Club World Cup yet. What's going to happen once we played that Club World Cup, and we have another summer with no break, and then we go into the 2026 World Cup, an expanded World Cup, where there's another summer without break, and then we go into that. Can you imagine that Can you imagine the 2026-27 season when we've had 6 years in a row with no break? You think it's bad now with injuries? What's it going to be like then? It's just absurd. If I'm the players, put your foot down, say we're not playing. And if they do end up going, if I'm a player and my team is going to, I'm just faking injury. I'm doing like what Ryan Giggs used to do for Man United, and just pretend you're injured before every international game. But like he used to do before every Wales game, he used to just pretend he was injured. Ferguson used to tell him, just say you're injured, don't go. I'm not going to that Club World Cup. I'm feigning injury, and I'm saying, you know what? I don't care about this Mickey Mouse tournament. I'm going to be fit for the next season. I want a proper rest, and I'm thinking of the World Cup in 2026. I'm not playing. That's what the players should do, rather than playing against.
I don't think it's the Club World Cup as such. I think that's just too reactionary to just look at that and point at that. It's all of it.
It's all of it, yes. But
yeah, but this is what I'm saying.
using that as an example.
I know, but I'm saying if you want to do something properly, because remove the Club World Cup, that's 3 games group stages, potentially 8 games all along. Fine, I get that. That's not a lot. The problem is the Nations League. The problem is more games in the Champions League that never stops, just keeps going, rolling every single week because of an increase there. Too many games in the leagues. Like, if you're going to do something, you need to do it across the board. I think the Champions League format is great with the way that the draw is, not having group stages like that, but a league stage, fewer games. I think the Serie A has no business being 20 teams. It should be 18. The Nations League needs to be abolished. It's as simple as that. It's a stupid waste of a tournament.
Well, to be honest with the Nations League, it isn't increasing the games. All it is just making them slightly more competitive, because those friendlies were still there. There hasn't been an increase in games with the Nations League. So I don't think that's the least.
The intensity has increased because if you remember during friendlies,
the intensity
the top players didn't used to get called up, or they could not go or whatever. This is stupid.
Yeah, the intensity increase, but I think that's the least of the problems. The big problems is the increase in games, because everything else has expanded. The World Cup has expanded, 32 to 48. The Champions League has expanded.
That's once every 4 years. That's not the issue. The issue is, like I said, there's too many games being played at club level. And of course, with the Nations League now turning the friendlies, what used to be the friendly break, into more competitive games that actually mean something, where you can qualify for tournaments, and the World Cup on top of that, Club World Cup on top of that. No, they need to get rid of the Nations League. The Club World Cup needs to be...
One physio said, and I actually think he has a point, that actually by increasing to 5 subs from 3 subs is actually causing more injuries than with 3. And the reason why is because you've got 5 subs, players are coming on, the intensity of the games are much more intense than they were before, because players are coming on. 5 players are coming on in the second half of matches, and are super fit and can run more, can sprint more, and are increasing the intensity of the game. And for especially against the tired players, and that is actually leading to more injuries, because the games are even more intense because of the extra subs, and that is actually leading to more injuries than 3 subs, where you had more tired players on the pitch, and the level and the intensity of the game dropped as the game went.
That's an interesting point. That's an interesting point, but I would need some data to back that up. I'm not saying it's not right, but I would need some more data to back that up. But it's an interesting point, and I think it should be looked at. My point is simply there are too many games across the club and international level, and they need to cut it down or extend or make the squads bigger, but that's not sustainable because clubs can't afford that. Like, you see what I'm saying? Like, at the end of the day, Serie A, all these other clubs, all these leagues need to address one of these issues. The Premier League will never in a gajillion years accept to going to an 18-team league. It's just not going to happen. It's never going to happen. And I don't think the Serie A, the small clubs, you'll never find a majority in the Serie A to do that either. You're just never going to do that. It's never going to happen. So the question remains, okay, well, the Champions League, you can keep the format, but reduce it to the same number of teams as it was before. The Nations League is stupid. No one cares. Literally, no one cares. Get rid of that. And as for the qualifiers for the World Cups and Euros, I actually think what Arsene Wenger suggested a couple of years ago is spot on. Have it at the end of the season, like a tournament. Like where you play all the qualifiers all at once, and you don't.
That I agree with, because
but you don't have home and away. Instead, you have, like, say for example, you divide all the club teams or nations in Europe into as many groups as they have now, but you host a tournament in different countries in the summer where they play once, not home and away, once over a couple of weeks, and they go to whoever wins the group goes blah blah blah, and then you have the playoffs if you finish second. You know what I mean, like that. But have it like a tournament like that at the end of the season instead of this, and no more home and away. Just one-off games, like a tournament, mini tournament.
Yeah,
that reduces it. It makes it more interesting.
What, you're talking about qualifying here?
Yeah, qualifiers. Turn the qualifiers into the World Cup and Euros into like a mini tournament at the end of the season. I
don't know if I agree on the home and away, but I do agree.
No, you play it at a neutral venue.
Yeah,
like
I'm not. I'm not sure if I agree with that, but I do agree with playing it with playing it in all in one go, because then you get rid of the travel, and I think that also impacts on injuries. The travel, the exhaustion, especially players coming from traveling long distances.
Or you can do it like the Champions League format does it, like the new one does now, where you have a long league where they play. Well, the league stage is 8 games? Some you have home, some you have away. The top 16 go through. Do you see what I'm saying? There's ways around that.
At the end of the day, whatever they do, they're only going to do it if it's financially going to.
They could do that. That would be financially.
You would never ever sell it in a boardroom to anybody. Well, we're going to reduce the number of games for player safety. But you're going to lose loads of money. Well, no, it's not what you say. But it's not what you're going to say. But it's what they're going to think.
But how are they going to think that when? Well, this is
because they're going to lose money. That's why
they're not going to lose money. They're not.
They are. You reduce a Premier League season or Serie A.
I'm not talking about the Premier League. I'm not
talking
about that. I'm talking about the international football. As I said, I literally said like a minute ago, you're never ever going to find a majority in the Premier League or the Serie A or the Liga or the Bundesliga or La Liga to reduce the leagues from 20 to 18. It's never going to happen. But what you can do is you can reduce the number of games at international level, like the Nations League, get rid of the Club World Cup. You can, when it comes to the international break, when it comes to qualifiers, you can reduce that by creating like a tournament, a mini tournament where you play You don't play home and away. You either play like a tournament like that, or you have like 6 countries that host it, and everyone plays each other once, or you do it like the Champions League version that we have now, where you play one team once. You do the draw like they do the Champions League, and you have a league stage where the top, I don't know, 16 go through, places 17 to 32 have a playoff. You reduce the games and you create more hype around it, if you know what I mean. That you can market and sell more than having Sweden travel to Liechtenstein and Liechtenstein travel to Sweden. I mean, it's just that does not bring any revenue. I can guarantee you that much.
No.
So my point is, you can do it by being smarter. There are solutions.
Yeah, but that's
to
just
this.
international football you're talking about. That's not club
Yeah,
football.
because then you would reduce that by quite a lot.
Yeah, but that's just international football. That's not club football. The money's in club football, unfortunately, and that they're not going to accept. Any.
Yeah, the leagues won't do it. There's never gonna. It's never. I don't even talk about that.
The leagues are not going to do it. UEFA's not going to do it, and the money.
I think it should be 18, but it's never going to happen. So it's pointless to talk about. My point is, keep the format of the Champions League, but reduce the teams to what it was a year ago.
The problem is there's too many club games. There's not too many international games. There isn't. There hasn't been an increase in.
I look at it the number of games in total for the players, and given that it's impossible to reduce the number of club games, then you have to reduce somewhere else. The Nations League is something new. It didn't exist. It doesn't need to exist. You can change the number of qualifiers.
I don't think that international football should suffer because club football just wants to keep increasing the number of games. I don't think so. I don't think international, because there hasn't been an increase in games in international football. Yes,
but it's the number of games total.
I know, but the reason the number of games in total is more is because there's been ridiculous increase in club games. International football, yes, I do agree that they can restructure it and maybe do it in like one chunk. Maybe play all the games in a 1 month period, and maybe there's a different way of organising it, like you've suggested. But I think ultimately they need to decrease the number of club games. They have to. It's absurd.
Well, and
players are playing 70 club games a season. Forget that international games. If some people playing 60 to 70 club games a season. Even if you're playing no international games at all. That's too many games. I mean, it's ridiculous. But anyway, we something needs to be done about it. That's for sure. I'm sure this topic will come up again.